Slightly later than intended. We had to review Raw first, go through our notes, compare positives, compare negatives. You know the deal. But we're here anyway. Grin Grappler, Antonio Inoki. This is a very, very special show. I'm excited for this. The format's a little bit different. We only have 4 matches. We're going to be a little more loose. Talk kind of broadly about one of the more iconic, significant figures in wrestling history. I have an expert panel as always. High Chancellor of all things wrestling history, Bobby Two Shoes. How are you tonight, Bob?
I'm doing well, man. Good to be here. Looking forward to this one. Enjoyed these matches quite a bit, and yeah, good stuff.
You do you not find that title to be a little bit pretentious? That self-appointed High Chancellor business. That's a little much, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but it's
bit.
fine. Yeah.
All right, mate, whatever you say. Is this the only show that you're listed as Rob on the overlay too, which has just struck me as we're doing
I think so.
this?
Yeah.
All right, fair it works for me. The Oracle of Wrestling, one of the greats. You're back, pal. Grin Grappler, Antonio Inoki. This feels like your kind of grin, mate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm back. I'd like to congratulate Bobby on his alma mater beating my favorite South Carolina Gamecocks in somewhat humiliating fashion.
Thanks, pal.
The only thing I can say is the only excuse I have is that Missouri has a top 20 ranked defense nationally, so that's my excuse.
That's
actually
fair.
a fact, by the way. Did you know that, Bobby?
I did. They've actually been quite good. Offense has been the problem.
Yeah, their offense is god awful, but we couldn't stop the run, so whatever. Anyways, otherwise, I'm doing great.
Good.
Yeah.
They didn't have anything to do with Raw.
No.
All right, whatever you say, pal. Alex, back again. Another Grin Grappler. How are you tonight, pal?
Yeah, I'm okay. In the sports vein, last night was a rough night for myself with the Cincinnati Bengals. So today's been a day of recovery emotionally, but my understanding is we have new women's tag team champions. That kind of helped to boost the serotonin there. So, good. Excited to talk about, man, quite the figure in the world of professional wrestling, and got an interesting array of matches here to discuss. But as always, I'm just honored to be here with the giants of the industry.
I'll wait for them to turn up. Have you heard that Paul's going to bring back the old NWA tag titles for these new women's champions? Have you heard this? Very exciting times.
Okay.
History unfolding. I'm sure they won't lose them on Saturday. All right. It's actually this. We used to do this deal. We would do this thing where we would, if something happened, the rest of the week covered. If something positive happened, we would take credit for it.
Mm-hmm.
For example, this program started with Samoa Joe, you may recall, when he made his triumphant comeback to professional wrestling. Alex, you were in attendance. It was a great deal. We did a victory lap. That is less possible for some other ones. I think we need to take the fucking credit for this Asuka deal, don't you? I mean, that was our last show. We whined. We complained. We all know who watches up there in Stamford. Shout out to Bruce. All of a sudden, she's got the most prestigious prize in all the sports. Bobby, I mean, I'm not asking for scoops here, but we have something to do with this, I feel.
Oh no, absolutely. It wasn't entirely our doing, but probably about 90% us.
What's the other 10? I'm intrigued. Do we go Triple H or just all Asuka and Alexa themselves? What do you?
Yeah, just asking Alexa, just pushing for it.
Pushing for it, politicking? You're not allowed to do that anymore, Bob. That's very problematic.
Io didn't shake someone's hand when she got to the building.
Oh, I hope that story. Wouldn't that be incredible? We got one of those stories back. Didn't wait till the end of the matches on the house show, brother.
Oh God!
Didn't shake Natalia's hand.
It's been Natalia, man. Come on.
She would be like the elder statesman, and goes into Paul's office. Look, it's not my place to say this, but I feel like you should know.
Looking texting Alexa last night. I told you she couldn't work, man. She doesn't know what she's doing out there. Too stiff, man. We're on the road 300 days, Yeah, so our luck is back. It's going to be I don't want to kind of. This is a trend that will definitely end. We do current wrestlers consistently enough. It will not. It will not end well. Inevitably, we'll do a Grin Grappler at someone who immediately gets their release the next day, and we'll be like, "Well, fuck," that'll be a show. At one point, I genuinely assumed that the October wrestler would be CM Punk. Probably for the best. I didn't consider that much further than September. That would have probably aged badly, but nonetheless,
we were just going to watch the Money in the Bank match with Cena 6 times. Was that the plan?
Well, I was going to have to send some kind DMs about 60-minute brawl boys. It's going to have to be. It's going to be quite heated. It's going to be a deal. So one day, Oracle. One day we'll be able to circle back, bro. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay. But as we said, we're here today. Antonio Inoki. a different kind of show because I think it would be foolish to just look at Inoki through the lens of him as a wrestler. I mean, we're going to do that. We're going to talk about these 4 matches and talk kind of broadly, but like he is so much more than just a professional wrestler who had professional wrestling matches. Like his legacy, that is really just like a piece of the puzzle. So we'll start as we always do, and then we'll just kind of talk loosely and broadly about Inoki for a little bit. Generally, we start with our own personal fandoms, and I'm really intrigued on this. Oracle, I'll start with you. When would you say you started watching Inoki, became aware, so on and so forth? Go ahead, pal.
So I only sort of knew him as like, the Japanese wrestling legend for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then Deathlight Driver did the 80s sets, and the New Japan set came out. And lots of gyms and classic matches and whatnot were present on there. And
What did Tony Khan think?
I don't know. I'm sure he has it. Come on, you know for a fact he has it.
Yeah.
But and I was like, okay. I'd always heard criticisms about him as a worker in terms of just like, I don't know. I think people like some are that he wouldn't sell or like he would take up too much of a match or whatever. In some cases that's true, but going through the footage, especially in the 80s, like he has a certain like charisma and aura about him that's like amazing. And like, I mean, he's the biggest star. Am I echoing?
No, there's some sort of noise. I don't know. Don't worry about it. Carry on, Oracle. You're cooking.
And he has this amazing presence, and it kind of uplifts his matches, even if they're not always the most like perfect matches in terms of like execution or whatever. Which all the shits I've read, anyways. But like you always bought him too, like when he would like do holds, and we'll talk about that some here. Like he was obviously an advocate for like shoot style and working, actually having an actual like presentation of what looked like an actual fight. He had an incredible presence about him, and is a big part of a lot of awesome feuds and whatnot over particularly in the 80s. And we'll cover one of those with Choshu. The match we covered was a big match that was built for like a year, really. And I mean, he's got all sorts of awesome stuff. Of course, it was because that was like the Choshu's Army or whatever. I guess I can't remember what were they called. Do y'all remember what they were called? Choshu's Army before he jumped over to All Japan. I can't remember the name.
Bob?
Damage Control.
Damage Control.
The Undisputed Era.
Oh Jesus.
I'm the Undisputed Era. I'm just trying to think of the feuds that I remember seeing. Of course, Hansen in 1980. They have a couple good matches.
Yeah.
The big Choshu's Army versus New Japan feud, and then the New Japan versus UWF feud, which they never really totally paid off because Maeda did not work out.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to be Inoki Maeda in the end, but that did not work out, obviously. Yeah, he's something special, and of course he's got his unique matches with Saito on an island, and I mean just did all kinds of crazy neat shit. Wrestled Flair and fucking North Korea.
Yeah,
like just some insane shit. One of the more interesting politickers in the history of wrestling.
Certainly,
maybe the most interesting. Even above someone like Triple H, because after he passed. PWO's Lost made a great post on Twitter about how he was like New Japan was literally like plummeting, and he somehow was able to pull them out from the grave multiple times in the 80s.
Yeah, it was like the idea that some of his biggest hits were basically born from necessity because he would fuck things up in another way. Like he would
exactly.
He would get them up.
He would take them all the way to their grave, and then boom, an idea.
Yeah.
Woo, business back booming again.
That's kind of the story of his political career too. Like I'm not going to pretend to understand the inner workings of politics in Japan, but like everything I read about it sounded like it would be this thing. He would get on a train, ride it, and then it wasn't going to work, so he would completely flip flop on whatever issue he was on. And he did some controversial things in that aspect too, like trying to mend fences with North Korea and shit. It's
Indeed.
like, brother, not the territory to work with, my man.
We just wanted a simple working relationship, brother. I'm intrigued, Dork. We'll just stick with you for a moment. What's like, because I know there's criticism as a worker, but like, what's the general perception of him in like one of those forum spots, or generally, what would you say the perception of his worker is? He a guy people would see deemed great? Would they say he's good, more of a star? How would people
People see him more of like clearly as like a megastar, but like they don't care for his work much because I think I don't know. I honestly don't remember like exact details of arguments, but I just know that people kind of thought he would like not sell much and would kind of take up a match with his like kind of typical Inoki traits that he does in his matches. Yeah. And I think it frustrated people, and there was also I don't know, like I think there was like this kind of similar to how like people kind of talk about Jericho now, in a way. We're like,
cannot wait to see where this goes.
Did he used to do a Judas effect?
Not so much in terms of like, I mean, not this, but like in terms of he was kind of in the way of the other big stars of the company. And he always wanted his program or his feud to be the number one thing well into his 40s and like all the way up to he's like 50 years old. And I think some fans kind of rejected that. Because you had, your Fujinamis and such, that were obviously megastars themselves. I think I get the impression that people were kind of annoyed with that from reading posts. That's and that Jericho's not a great comparison, but Triple H is kind of that's, I mean, of course he wasn't. Inoki would put people over, you know what I mean, more so. He did with Vader and he eventually put Fujinami over.
He was like Triple H. That's a good comparison in that way of like he would wait and then do like a job and then be like, see, I put people over, and just like Triple H, I let Shelton Benjamin beat me 20 years ago. It's I helped the business out.
Right. He was definitely like he was one of those, as somebody put in the chat, they said he was like the Master Carney on the Eastern Hemisphere, and Vince was the Master Carney on the Western Hemisphere. Which I thought, that little.
And then there was Onita, who figured out how to work both
there
hemispheres.
There you go. But yeah, I mean that was always kind of my, I guess, understanding of people's complaints against him.
Bobby, I'm intrigued where you're kind of at on this, like your familiarity with Inoki, what you hadn't seen before this, your kind of idea of him. Because again, he is, there are some wrestlers we know of by name but haven't explored deeply. But he's not in that category. He's like an idea in some ways, right? Because of some of the things he so famously stood for in wrestling and beyond. Bob, where are you at on this kind of tradition? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, he's not someone that I like had a vast knowledge of. Obviously, I knew he was around and New Japan was around, but it's not something I ever really took time to seek out prior to 5 or 6 years ago. So yeah, a lot of it's just been stories that people have told through shoot interviews, documentaries, whatever. And then this was kind of completely different because I never really even thought of him really as a worker, just more of a that's the guy that runs New Japan pretty much. And obviously he's a big deal. I knew like the big historical stuff, but yeah, not a whole ton. And like just the more you hear, the more like fascinating of a guy he is. And there's definitely a lot more that I need to kind of seek out and learn. And this has been a really good start for that.
Wrestling history is deep enough that there are very few folks you can truly say they're like one of one. Like no one will ever walk that path in any comparable way. It was truly unique.
One more important thing to mention about Inoki is how important of a historical figure he is in the history of wrestling. Like he and Giant Baba were basically like the sort of disciples of Rikidozan.
Yes.
And Rikudoza
This
was
is
the first
incredible.
true wrestling star in Japan. They were his disciples, like his two big disciples, and they were friends, tag team partners. Inoki, I believe, was the one who went and pulled the Carney Inoki shit and went and made New Japan, and the split happened in 1972, I believe, 71 or 72.
Yeah.
New Japan was
72 was when
Inoki,
both formed.
Baba
right?
was
Yeah.
All Japan. So that's like he's like it's almost like it's almost like the comparison of like I don't want to make this. I'm making a comparison here. Let me be clear, but it's like the biblical like the
Yeah.
sons of.
It is an
I did not do well
incredible.
when I was confirmed, but my
It
biblical
is an incredible tale.
Yeah,
It's like insanely like perfect and poetic the way it worked out, and the fact they had such differing philosophies with those promotions. It's very, very interesting.
I was about to say the story of Ricky Dozen, I think biblical is in the sense of how the whole story went for that guy too is kind of an accurate word to use. But
yeah, I would agree.
Didn't it have to do something that Inoki was getting pissed that Baba was getting more bookings in America?
I believe that's
something like that.
Something along the lines of that. Yeah.
Which obviously then that was an interesting thing because Inoki would have the partnership with Vince Senior, right? And Baba would be like the NWA and them were kind of paired in that way. And that really shaped All Japan style, right? Like guys like the Funks really shaped what All Japan became. And there was a big time kind of crossover with like the Southern style in the States. And
say Baba would pop in and out of World Class back in the glory days.
There you go. Alex, where are you at in terms of your own fandom, your own experience? I would assume, knowing you, there's some MMA elements here too from the mid 2000s. I would guess, right? Go ahead.
I was going to say I didn't want to speak for my friend Joe, but I think our relationship with Inoki might be a little bit different in the sense of the MMA correlation, and that's for me and my fandoms immediately one of the most interesting things about Antonio Inoki is like if it weren't for him, both the worlds of wrestling and mixed martial arts would be profoundly different. If he did not exist, who knows? Complete dystopia or some shit. But Inoki, man, I was trying to think of like what to compare him to for people that aren't really familiar with him, and I was thinking like kind of like Elvis in the sense of like if you even just kind of from a distance are a fan of wrestling or MMA, you can't go too far into that fandom without at least being aware of this person. And it's kind of in the same sense of like, if you're just into pop culture, if you're just into music or movies, you can't get too far into that without learning there's this dude named Elvis who did like all this crazy shit. And that's kind of like Inoki is, he without question is bigger than his body of work. Like I think we're not going to be talking about the best match we've ever covered on Grin Grappler here tonight or anything like that, but it's like the things he did, the how instrumental he was in like Pride, and because of that, like the showmanship they brought to it and his involvement in it kind of made the UFC raise their game. And with the wrestler, it was a great wrestler, ran his own promotion, had the Three Musketeers, which were his like guys, and then who were the new Three Musketeers? There was Nakamura, Shibata, and who else?
Tanahashi was the third, I believe.
Tanahashi,
because that was the beef, right? Was that Tanahashi kind of resented Shibata, I believe, when he left. I think was what happened.
Yeah. Sorry, Tana, I didn't mean to forget you there, but like, it's just he's this guy that I respect because like he would never admit he had bad ideas. He just like would bleed them dry. Like, we'll talk about this the more we get into it, but like his whole thing of like, well, my guys should be legitimate tough guys. So he made Shibata go accrue a fucking like 2-11 MMA record to try to prove some point. And, Nakamura, I think only lost one of his fights, but he was a crazy man. But, one of one is a great way of putting it. There's nothing to compare him to. When Meltzer was doing like his audio obituary of him talking about like the closest thing I could explain is like he was Hulk Hogan, but a bigger star. Like he in his home country was bigger. And then of course Inoki, movies, TV, recognized as a real sports hero there, was like a bona fide star, had the political career, and then all this other shit that like he successfully negotiated the release of terrorists from the Gulf War, and the whole story of collision in Korea, which could be an entire episode in and of itself. It's just what a fascinating man. And was a carny through and through in the sense of just he was one of those guys too that like it's surprising him and Hogan didn't do more business together because they're both
Right.
well, you said this. No, I didn't. Well, we have it on tape. Oh, that's wrong. Like that type of thing. He was but for me personally, it was like I kind of remember him being around when I was a little kid in WCW. Like I forget what show he worked Regal on, but
He was Clash, right? Yeah, it was
Clash.
Clash.
there's those pocket of Japanese guys I have memories of from childhood that would pop in and out of WCW. But by the time I got to like high school and got more into the forum thing, learning more about the insanity, and in college I did this presentation on because that would have been like 07 when MMA was really taking off, the rise of it, and part of it was like explaining who Antonio Inoki was and that he fought Muhammad Ali and like this ridiculous like sideshow attraction. And I mean, he's a fascinating guy. I'm looking forward to talking about the wrestling because while I agree he was very selective of things like selling and like being on the receiving end of a lot of things, he might when he was actually committed to it, he might be like one of my favorite sellers ever.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the way he
Awesome.
sold things,
Incredible.
it was just incredible. So
Mm-hmm.
interesting man. And what I posted on Twitter when he passed was like he literally lived a life that no one else has ever lived, and
Yeah.
that's
Insane.
That's got to count for something.
I can say with confidence that we will never ever again compare one person to both Triple H and Elvis in the same segment. We're never going to do it again, folks. That was one of one. But yeah, it's really interesting. The Regal match is a quick thing on that because it popped me. Regal was on his podcast and he said he wanted a picture of him suplexing Inoki. That was the only thing he wanted for the match. So he knew Inoki was going to take most of it and win. So he wanted a picture. And he was like, he did not want to take that suplex. Regal had to just like shoot fucking suplex him. And if you watch it through that lens, it's amazing. Like, because Regal would give guys a lot of space, but he was like, I need this one, and he has the picture. Like, so that's very cool. But
that's amazing.
Yeah, man, and that's 94. And the Flair match is 95, right? Which is certainly a spectacle. Scott Norton declared it the greatest wrestling match ever, which is that's Scott Norton's opinion. He's entitled to it. But the heat for it is an incredible moment because they sit in silence for the rest of the show, understandably so. But it's very, very interesting.
Hold on. They react to Bull Nakano just because they see her and they're like, "What is this?" They're like, "We've never seen anything like this in our country before."
The Steiners match is amazing because Scott does do every time he hits a move, he does the thing where he celebrates, right? And he does that there, and they're just completely unmoved. It's actually a strong match, the Steiners match on the show. But anyway, that's another conversation for another day, as you said. I have to say, before doing this, I honestly feel like I've seen barely a handful of Inoki matches. But I feel like I knew a bunch about him through secondhand stories, as Bob mentioned, and stuff would always pop on Twitter. This thing that Inoki did, and that But actually, seeing how much his matches, this was fun because I hadn't really done it before. Now, our lineup is unique in the sense that a lot of Inoki's highest rated matches are 60 minutes long, which, folks,
60.
Please.
The Gauntlet's like 80 minutes.
Exactly, right. And that's the ones
90 minutes.
They're the ones you'd say I really like a thing we have to
those
watch.
are literally the best matches in the history of wrestling.
Our 4 matches are 4 different phases. We'll get into those in a moment. We're doing it like this because I think the match conversation shouldn't be the priority here, right? It's just us talking about Inoki, which is kind of what I think it should be. But yeah, it's interesting. Like Alex mentioned, I kind of knew him as a figure and an idea. It was very bizarre for me being there when the day after he passed, I was at the New Japan show, right? I mentioned this to you guys on the last show. That was surreal, man. Like a small building like that, and Tanahashi and Okada led the whole locker room out. I mean, I'll remember that forever. That was very, very, very unique situation. So, the importance for of what he was for professional wrestling as a whole can't be overstated. The fact that he, we've all kind of mentioned it, but it can't be overstated. He fought Muhammad Ali, which is a preposterous thing to consider. Muhammad Ali is genuinely one of the most famous people to ever walk the earth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they fought for an hour in one of the strangest fights ever. It's like the original MMA fight, right? It really is in a lot of ways. Not necessarily saying I should go out there and watch it, but it's an incredible thing. I was about to say,
watch kind of the first round because the crowd's really into it, but then it's the story behind. There's a book that Josh Gross wrote about it that's really good. It's the story is way more interesting than the actual match turned out to be.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I know it messed up Ollie's legs pretty bad, right? He basically just dropped to his back and was throwing kicks the whole time. It's a very interesting thing more than it is saying you need to go your watch, definitely. I want to kind of stick with this conversation really, and we talked about him in kind of broad strokes, and we started him as a wrestler and such. But one of the things that's really unique about Inoki is the idea that like his philosophy throughout his lifetime, we watched that rise and fall, right?
Yep.
I mean, you mentioned the mid 2000s and even beyond that with Shibata, but like, Yuji Nagata ended up fighting fucking Fedor and Crow Cop and stuff. Yeah, like
yeah.
genuinely two of the most dangerous heavyweights in the history of the sport. The guy just had to get in there with them because otherwise he would look like a pussy, I guess. I don't fucking know. And it's like we all have our fun with it used to be better, but it's one of the things that makes Inoki interesting is he lived and died by that philosophy to the point when it was clearly over, right? Like when he had that
Josh
promotion
Barnett main evented a fucking Wrestle Kingdom because Inoki thought it was like the right thing to do.
It's, and it's like that. I don't mean this as a discredit to him. I just think it makes him more interesting. Like New Japan in the last 10 years has got this huge sort of global recognition, right? And the way they did that ultimately was Tanahashi kind of westernized the product, right? And Gedo as the booker. And the idea that in some ways, within Inoki's lifetime, his own philosophy represented this like evolution of wrestling is like genuinely fascinating because that is something you can't really replicate. Like he stuck to his guns on that, and it like nearly destroyed everything. But he was never gonna give in on that front. It's just so interesting to me, man. I don't know, it's wild.
His I mean, his last big like hit would have been Bob Sapp, right? In like 2002 or 03, like who's for the end of time, as long as they show that fucking IWGP fucking montage, he's in there. And but yeah, man, that the Inokiism, and you're not going to find someone more than me that thinks like that grapple style presentation is the best. At the same time, exactly like you're saying, it was like, they had the fucking defibrillators out, and Inoki was still just like, stay the course, we're gonna be all right here. And then was he part of the deal with Brock? I'm trying to remember because then he had the Genome Federation.
Yeah, Brock. He was the guy that Brock ultimately did business with, and he dropped the belt on that promotion. And because New Japan, like when he left Brock, he left with a belt, right? So they made a new belt
because they were like, we need it back. And he was like, come take it.
Yeah, so then like he dropped it on an Inoki show, I think against Angle, and they got it like back, and they like united, brought the belts and the New Japan together. I think was what happened, but. Yeah, it's just like, and again, I'm with you, by the way. Like, I actually think the further we get away from it, the more we can kind of romanticize and cherish what he viewed. Well, but it is amazing to think about the way it changed in his lifetime,
What's funny about his mentality, too, was like, he was obviously a tough guy and had some big high-profile shoots in different countries, but I think he just, I fought Muhammad Ali, so that's it. And then, like you just said, Yuji Nagata, Shibata, fucking Nakamura, these other guys that he just kind of sent to the Lions to get kind of chewed up in MMA, and like what purpose did it serve for him in the end? He was just like, I did it, so you should too. Most of his shit, he was kind of like the original Onita in the sense of he would book all these like world traveled strongmen or accomplished martial artists to fucking beat him. And Sting also. If you've never seen their 5-minute match that's worked like a shoot, it's so uncomfortable. Watch Steve Borden try to like put up his fists and work leg kicks.
It's funny because at first it worked, right? Like in the 80s when they did the UWF feud, because like these are actual like fucking
Mm-hmm.
I
mean, it worked for Onita too in the beginning. It's just like there's only so much you can do with that.
Right. And it's weird because what he brought to wrestling was both awesome and bad because like I don't know, when you watch, and I go back to that feud because that was the pivotal feud of what started it really was the UWF New Japan feud in 86 and 87. And like you see like Fujiwara and Takada and like all these guys, and you like, you believe them when you're, and then like here we are almost 40 years later, and like, Tyler Black's trying to do fucking MMA holds in a fucking cage, and it's like, okay, like,
Right. Yeah.
let's leave it to the people who.
You mentioned Takada too, and he was a victim of that Inoki style of thought in
Oh
terms
yeah,
of like
oh
trying
yeah.
to be a real fighter and getting shredded.
Exactly. And like, granted, I'm not even a Takada fan, but like, I mean, he was a big part of the UWF feud, but like, he was definitely a victim of that for sure.
Bob, have you ever seen Antonio Inoki versus the Great Antonio?
I have not.
Okay. Well, when we're done here, you need to look it up. It's an example of what we're talking about. One of these like weary travelers, or like he was a strongman that
Yeah.
Inoki brought in to like beat, and this guy didn't want to work with him, and then Inoki like beat him, he rendered him unconscious, and was stomping on his head, and it's quite the spectacle to behold.
Yes. There's a very famous.
They do a tournament.
Bill
They do a tournament in '89, okay, in New Japan,
Yes.
where like they bring a bunch of Russians and shit, and they work like, I mean, these guys are like, I think some of these guys may have worked in like rings or something later on, but like, there's a famous match that's awesome with fucking Shinya Hashimoto versus a guy named Victor Zangief or whatever, and it fucking rules, and it's like 5 minutes of like Hashimoto just like making like awesome Hashimoto faces. And
What year was that? Was that like
89?
I'm trying to remember when they tried to bring in Alex Carellin, because Greg Gagne says that like he had the deal with Alex Carellin that would have bankrupted Vince McMahon, but it got fucked up.
There's also a match in October of '86 where Akira Maeda faces Don Nakaya Nielsen in a kickboxing match, and it fucking rules.
God bless.
And like, have you ever seen that, Alex?
No, anything that happened in Japanese wrestling in the late '80s, though, I believe. You could tell me like anything happened, and I would believe that it did.
It fucking, that match is actually good, but like, it's fascinating stuff for sure.
Bob, are you sure this has never appeared on your timeline? The Gran Antonio match has Bill Burrow he's done like a commentary track for it.
I don't think so, but yeah, maybe when I see it, it'll.
It is incredible, man.
It's so awesome how he describes Inoki. He's like, he looks like he just stepped off a fucking movie set. He's got the old school chin, and he's got the beautiful hair.
It is incredible, Bob. What do you make of the kind of philosophical element here? Because, like, as the guys just said, it's what makes it so interesting is this is not like some crazy guy who was convinced but didn't really have the like. He walked the walk. He was that big a star. He was right for a long time until things changed. So for you, Bob, as someone who I think is probably, you watch more modern than old school, but your favorite wrestler is someone who crossed over and fucking won the UFC heavyweight title.
Mm.
Like, what do you make of like the mythology surrounding Inokiism and all that comes with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've only seen a little bit of it. I like it. I think if I dug in more, I'd like it even more. There probably was a time and place for it, and we might be past it now. But like, from how it's described and from what I've seen, I'm a big fan.
It's
I had
interesting.
a quick question there. Like, I have a question and a comment, sir. Number one, I'm not going to pass up an opportunity to talk shit about Seth Rollins. When he did a Peruvian necktie, I turned it. I was just like, fuck this dude. But Bob, does it matter? And this is for the room, but I'll start with Bob since we're talking to him right now. And this is kind of from the Inoki thing. Does it matter to you if a wrestler you like could really like beat you up, or that they're a legitimate tough guy? Does that shit matter to you at all?
I want to say no, but like most wrestlers I do like fall into that category. So I guess subconsciously, kind of. Yeah.
Alexa.
Yeah.
Exactly. Sure. I think we're at a point, obviously, now where that's gone. I don't, we're not all Randy the Natural Couture, but I could whip Kevin Dunn's ass, that type of thing. And look, I'm not going to fight anybody, but when I watch people like Seth Rollins or like Sammy Guevara, it's something like that. I'm just like, all right, dude. Like, there's no combat that I believe that Sammy Guevara could whip Eddie Kingston's ass, like that type of thing. Right. And I know we're past that, but I do appreciate that he stuck with it so hard, Inoki, that our guys have to be perceived as legitimate tough guys. There's something, that's why Hulk Hogan almost killed Richard Belzer. Like the thing of, preserving the image of being a tough guy. And like Stone Cold was an interesting example because he just carried himself like he could whip someone's ass.
Yeah.
And like looked like it. It's just, I don't know. Joe, Oracle, do you have any thoughts on that?
I just, to me, it depends how they wrestle, you know? Because you could, sometimes a guy who everyone in the audience believes they could beat up is a good thing. You know, that can be good heat. You know, and if they don't work like a badass, you know, there are some guys on the independents who are 5'7" and work like Dr. Death Steve Williams, and that's a problem. But if they, you know, they work like a coward, if they take big bumps, or you know, I think there's room for range.
You need Spike Dudleys and shit like that.
I will say this, and this is a different show for another day, but people often bring this up with the Usos Young Bucks thing, right? That's a thing that he's regularly brought up. A friend of ours brought up famously and got the shit kicked out of him. And it doesn't matter to me. The one thing I'll say is it does allow you to do a different type of angle if the audience believes someone's a tough guy. They can get heat on a guy. Now, again, the alternative of the Young Bucks is they can be obnoxious, like a D-Generation X almost, right? They can be annoying. Bear with me, Alex. But on the other, if you believe, like, if you take the Usos as sort of guys you think could kick the shit out of you, they can, you know, babyface can get juice and they can put the boots to them, and it's like striking. Like there was a segment on SmackDown a couple weeks ago, I don't know if you guys saw it, but they were beating up Sheamus, and I mean, it was Jey Uso was like yelling, you know, and it was incredible. Sheamus, I don't know which babyface, I forget, I don't watch the show, but they were beating up someone and it ruled. And so you do different things with different guys. I think you certainly need guys on your roster the audience perceives to be genuine tough guys. But I think we're increasingly in a time of the variety show, for better or worse. That's where we're at, right? The audience wants like a buffet.
Yeah.
I think that's Bischoff. That's one of the things beyond just wrestling TV that he really like made a thing in wrestling. So yeah, it depends how they wrestle. You know, Danielson is not a very. But let's be fair, Bryan Danielson's what, 5'9"? You know, not particularly he's in great shape, but way he wrestles, I believe he could kick the shit out of me, right? Like he's, you know, because he's good at what he does. It all depends on the style. For me, Eric, where are you at on this?
Yeah, I mean, generally my favorites are guys or gals who, you know, I would think would beat the shit out of me or whatever. But like, I mean, there's also going to Joe's comment, like if I think somebody's tough, not necessarily could kick my ass, but like if they're like a Spike Dudley, like Alex mentioned, and I can see them take like for example, like I don't know, I mean somebody like Darby Allin takes all these crazy bumps because he's order. That's tough.
Yeah,
all that shit. Like, you know, there's a level of toughness there that I can respect. Even though I don't necessarily know if he could beat me up. I mean, you know, he's a smaller guy, but my point is he can take a hell of a beating, and it's like, okay, same thing with Jeff Hardy, right? Or
and that's how he wrestles.
That goes to like telling the story. Like Joe went straight for it. I was trying to tiptoe around it, but yeah, this influx of like indie guys that I'm a foot taller than, fucking, you know, doing their Suzuki forearm strikes and their rear naked chokes. It's just like, motherfucker, as Eddie Kingston once said, your heart pumps Kool-Aid, cuz calm down. It's and that's all the like Bloodsport like was awesome in the initial iteration where it was like guys you could believe were having real fights, and now it's the Ninja Mac and shit like that. John Morrison's in there. It's like, come on.
Right. I guess it's more for me. It's like if I watch somebody, I want to be able to believe that they can throw a punch or take a punch.
Yes.
Right? You know, in general terms.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of where I want to. That's kind of my general.
Most entertaining fighters are the ones that can take an ass whipping and then figure out a way to win in the end.
Right.
Yeah. It is worth noting for anyone out there watching this, we are absolutely all out of touch, old fucks. I just want to be clear about that. We're trying to represent this another way. We're aware. Just let us be here, folks. We're enjoying ourselves of a Tuesday evening. I would imagine most people that feel a WWE show in 2022 do not care like 8% about these things we're discussing. But this is the way
there are exceptions. Like, I mean, I think Rey Mysterio is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. He can take a damn good beating, but his selling is, you know, I know Alex, you know, that's his favorite, you know. But his selling is so good, you know, and he never.
I was about to say, we know Rey Mysterio is a true shooter, man. We know what he's capable of.
You know. I set you up for that. That was
You did. I'm sorry. It's like,
You had to give him that, man.
yeah, it's there's all a place. It's like the Miz. That's
Yeah.
kids hate the Miz because it's like, oh, he's not a real tough guy, and that you need that shit. It's just
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's an interesting
That's a
thing.
gimmick, though, kind of.
Yeah.
Miz?
Right? Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think Miz has
Yeah.
ever gone in there and like traded forearms and fucking,
Yeah.
Because he's
fed his
also a good
chest
worker, and he understands that it would look
Well,
stupid for him to go out there and
right.
throw a fucking Jerry Lawler working
He's
punch.
not get carried away. I mean,
Well, he
he's
is a
a-
good worker. Anyways, go.
he was good a while ago.
He's been around on TV for 10 years, Joe, and he won the WWE title. That means he's an all-time great.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you guys think this was the? I'll just ask, and I don't want to kind of, step around it here. Like, do you think this is what EO and Alexa had in mind that we were doing this show after, during last night's Brawl for All?
They were
You think,
watching Inoki versus the great Antonio in the back, and it was just like, all right, and then
run it back.
yeah, let's show them how it's done, boys.
That's to confiscate their blade on the way out.
Alexa hit the curtain and got back, and she said, "That's how we do TV, boys."
My favorite part of the tag title match is when they laid in the ring for 3.5 minutes so Bianca and Bailey could have their brawl. Oh,
What, you mean the brawl that led into the perfectly set up platform so they could go through the perfectly set up table?
Yeah.
Never
Who set
usually
that up
there.
there, man? See,
I don't know, bro. It's crazy.
I have I was so depressed with the Monday Night Football game that I was switching over to Raw last night, and I caught the God bless Otis and Chad Gable doing the Chippendales SNL costumes. But I have such less of a problem with a match like that where they decorate the ring with decorations because it's Halloween or Thanksgiving or something than exactly what Oracle's talking about. It's like, here's this platform that's never been here before. I wonder if someone's going to use it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'd rather people complain about that than
Inoki would have come out and slapped Bailey and Bianca and said, "End this."
Imagine Inoki watching like any of that, just any of Raw.
Dude, that was when the big man Inoki went in the Hall of Fame. I don't remember which year that was, but God, he looked so happy. That was great.
Yeah.
But do you think he watched any of WrestleMania? Do you think he watched that and was content with what? I just imagine he's trying to hit the ring and fucking Bruce and Shane McMahon are having to hold him back.
Speaking of that, before we get to the matches,
Paul's out there working the fucking legs, hitting up from fucking Indian Deathlock.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what Mania it was so I could say the match specifically, but when he came out and he demanded Gallows and Turkai ended and he's throwing the chairs and shit. Bullshit!
Do you remember when Triple H wrestled Roman and one of the plot lines was that he'd learnt the arm bar and he was working his guard like he was fucking Damian Maya?
Oh, dude, the build to that WrestleMania 32 match. I know we're going all over the place here, but I just remember you could see the fucking seething erection in Triple H's pants when he came out and got that monstrous ovation. And then they did the thing where he broke Roman's nose, so Roman was off TV for 3 weeks or some shit.
And he threw him out of the Rumble and did the suck it to a big
pop.
pop.
Yeah, and they had to go tight because the crowd was losing their shit in the background. That's when Triple H hit Gorilla and said, "That's how it's done, boys."
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. All right, there you go, folks. We'll get into some matches now. I wanted it to be this way, it just seems silly to here are the 6 matches. Let's discuss that. I mean, I think we're going to also repeat ourselves a lot regarding the matches. I actually thought they were all a great time, but it's the ideas that we talk about are going to be very, very, they'll be repetitive some. So let's get into it. We start in 1971. Now, the way I try to do this was originally Oracle and I were looking at, we had 6 matches. And what I settled on was, here we basically have 4 phases of Inoki, right? This is before New Japan. Then we have him at the 70s height. He's the top guy, so and so, working Andre, which is a spectacle. Then we have him as a top guy in 84, and then we have him as a top guy in 96. It's expands his career. So I thought it was the most sort of logical way to do this with respect to his very unique career and not doing 90-minute matches. So let's get into it. NWA United National title.
Our friend JJ pointed out it was WrestleMania 26 that he was at. So Inoki saw that they were opening with Miz and Big Show versus R-Truth and John Morrison, and he was like Kurt Angle at that ECW show. He went up to Vince and he said, "I want my check I want it now. And if my face is seen anywhere on this program, you'll be hearing from my attorney.
I think he was probably wondering what kind of house he could draw at the dome with Paul White, to be honest with you. But, depends on the perception of it. But, yes, NWA, United National title, Jack Briscoe, 2 out of 3 falls. This is 5 months prior to New Japan being formed, I believe, which is an incredible fall. So this is probably my favorite match we watched. I'm going to go immediately in that direction. Some of the mat work here, especially early, in the middle, I think Inoki kind of slows things down. Some of the mat work early is like, it can't be overstated that watching this in a vacuum is one thing, but if you have any perspective on like 70s wrestling, there is some crazy stuff here on the mat, man. Like the way they're transitioning and stuff, it's beautiful mat work. So I love this match. Bobby, I'm assuming this was your first time seeing Jack Briscoe.
It was, yes.
What did you make of this? This was a very interesting watch, I thought.
Yeah, I actually liked it quite a bit. I saw it and I'm like, 35-minute match from 1971. I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. And it worked for me, though. And, I really like, 2 out of 3 falls match. I like when the first fall is the hardest one to get instead of the last one. So they really did a good job building to the first one, I think. And then the other 2 kind of fell into place. But, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I thought, it's going to be kind of slow. It's going to, but it is for some points, but not as much as I thought it was going to be.
I think structurally it's a really interesting match in terms of where the falls come. And, with the way the match turns around with the German suplex is basically the end of Briscoe, right? Like, I mean, he goes into the third fall, but he's done. He's just surviving that point. It was really interesting the way they put it together. Alex, what did you make of Inoki and Briscoe?
First thing, it looks Olympic. Like the way the ring, like the color of it all, and like the way their gear and shit. And then the crowd is different than you usually see in those Japanese shows. It's just kind of like an auditorium style seating, and it looks very cool. And yeah, I've seen a decent amount of Jack Briscoe, but I've always just loved because he's shoot interviews and stuff. The story about him was 2 packs a day, bottle of Jack, but was still the best conditioned guy in the game. Yeah. This is the match that has that collar and elbow that everyone always cites as like the best collar and elbow ever, where they just fucking hell for leather on it. It's great. Yeah, this surprise to no one who's watched more than one of these that this is my shit, man. I really like it. I love the selling. I love Jack Briscoe towards the end of like just the amount of head trauma, and he just can't shake it loose. And like the closing sequence, those stomps from Inoki just look brutal when he's just stomping on the back of his head, and the way Jack Briscoe's selling it, he's fainting the eyes, and they don't do anything here insane, but it's just very fundamental, and like everything they do works. Even you would think watching it in 2022, it seems silly, but it didn't. Where Jack gets tied up in the ropes, and like he's on his head and all the blood rushes to his head. So when they get him back up, the young boys do, he just like, falls back. And it's very enjoyable. And Inoki, man, what a bridge on that guy. Yes. I think I loved my favorite part in the match was he's like in a short arm scissors, and then Jack rolls out of it, but the ref sees that he's pulling the tights on Inoki. So the ref like kicks him to get him like to stop. And then it goes back to Inoki having the arm lock, and then Jack Briscoe tries to kick the referee, like he's trying to kick back up at him. And it's it's in a way what you would expect when you read this match on paper. But I had a ball watching this. It kind of honestly flew by.
Yeah, same here. And I mean, I must say, this is an Inoki show, but the detail work, especially on Briscoe's part, was like just so compelling, man. It was captivating throughout. He was always doing something, right? The way when he was in a hold, the way he would kick out or he would strike out. He was just incredible here. Oracle, what did you make of this one, pal?
Yeah, this was good shit, man. The thing I noticed more than anything was just like how believable the mat work was, especially in the early going. Yeah. Like, I mean, it honestly reminded me of like, actual like amateur wrestling that you would see. I just the basic like oh god, what was it? I wrestled one time in 6th grade, and I can't remember the name of it when you're on the when you're on like the fours and you start from the starting position or whatever, like after a point or whatever, or when you get out of bounds. They were doing that shit.
The pedigree?
No. Shut up. But yeah,
Jamie Destroyer.
they were they were they were doing that stuff. It popped me, and like it looked like a part of me wonders, like especially 70s style mat work and late 60s, 70s. Like I wonder if these guys were going for real a little bit here. Like
I
not
think
like
so,
obviously not like but like I wonder if they were going a little bit.
It's like Alex has definitely seen a lot of this stuff. Like when top level grapplers, they'll like do that flow grappling, where they're just like rolling. Like they're competing, but not like
Right.
you
Yeah.
know.
There's a looseness to it. I noticed that.
They're
but,
both so good at what they're doing that it's like the
Mhm.
transitions are seamless. It was kind of like that, but with a little extra grit because it was
Right.
1971, which is bonkers
Right.
to think about.
Right.
It's
And this is back
Oracle.
when these were real tough guys too, for the most part.
Mhm.
I was gonna say starting position, but I didn't want to sound like an idiot. But it's the starting position, but it's also known as the referee's position, where one guy's on.
That's right. The referee's position. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The Hebner position, as Bob calls it.
I was 4-4, by the way. 4 wins, 4 losses.
Hey man,
But that's pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Playing team.
Better than the Bengals doing.
By the way, I just brought up, Bob, when are we doing the Earl Hebner Grin Grappler? Do you have that scheduled yet? What's the match?
Yeah, when's his birthday? We'll do it for that month.
One of Bob's favorites. I will say one very slight negative. I did something that a lot of people talk about Inoki is that like he's sort of his pacing can be somewhat uneven.
Yeah.
Like a match will be developing one way and he'll just sort of. I did think the second fall of this when he worked the arm of Briscoe. As great as Briscoe's selling was, it did feel like he had just kind of hit a lull there of some kind. Great false finish after Briscoe takes the first fall. He gets that backslide, and the crowd pops like he's going to get the sweep, and he kind of does the signal to Inoki. It was real close. It's a beautiful match, fan. Again, and this is the thing. It's like I don't know, because these matches are more about they're very meat and potatoes, and it's the fundamentals. It's not going to be a bunch of us like calling out moments or spots. But if you've never seen this and you've never seen Jack Briscoe in general or Inoki in general, again, if you watch this, you've got to realize this is 51 years ago and they are working the mat like an elite level. Like it is striking. Yeah. Watch any 70s wrestling that isn't like this level, you'll realize how incredible what they're doing here is. I thought it was fucking insane considering the time. It's a great deal. Okay, let's move forward here. So, as I said, that was just before New Japan was formed. We now moved to 1976. Oracle, how knowledgeable are you about like the early years of New Japan and how well it was doing?
I'm not terribly knowledgeable about 70s New Japan. I have. There was a tremendous threads in Pro Wrestling Only of the histories of Japanese wrestling, All Japan and New Japan that I've read.
God bless. Okay.
Pretty far through, but it's been like a year or two since I read them, and of course I have decent enough knowledge of 80s New Japan. I've seen a bunch of that, but 70s I don't have quite as much of an understanding. I don't think.
Well, we jumped to 76 here, and this is a relevant year because this is the year that he fights Ali, right? And to give you some perspective on where Inoki's at in terms of star power, he is wrestling in our second match, Andre the Giant. I do not want to focus on the opposition in every match we do, but
it's worth bringing up because, like we talked about in our Stan Hansen one, watching fucking Andre when he can work, and watching fucking Ring of Honor main eventer Andre Rusimov in this match here is like just the technique, dude. I'm sorry, Joe. I cut you off, but like I'm ahead of you in terms of like, god damn, dude. Like
it's unbelievable.
I hate the idea that there's all these people out there that all they know of Andre is WrestleMania 3. Like, that between this and the Hansen match, I mean, obviously the Hansen match is just like
unbelievable. Clash of the Titans.
Yeah, exactly. This is Andre. Like Andre gets mad at Inoki for hitting him, so he's gonna out grapple him. It's fucking awesome.
It's unbelievable, and it's like I don't want it to sound like we're doing that thing. You know when people post that clip of Hogan doing an armbar, and they're like, he could really go, like, and it's like, well, yeah, he did an armbar, but like, I don't want. If you've never seen Andre in this part of his career, please understand, we're not saying he was like different to what you saw later. He is like a great professional wrestler in this match. Like he's selling And he does that wounded animal shit where like when Inoki hurts him, he's like a
Oh
big bear.
God, yeah, it's like it's like if like you're in a magical world and you run into an ogre and like you throw a rock at its head. Seriously, and he
It's
like gets mad at
incredible,
you.
man.
That's literally what it's like.
I thought this
Now-
was like stunning on Andre's part. It was incredible.
I think as history writes it, Inoki was one of the few guys that he was like willing to really sell
Right.
for. And man, does it like push this match from like being good to great? Just the like the way he tumbles to the outside and when he gets cut, and like the when he gives him that headbutt in short range. It's yeah, man. It's as someone who was guilty of what I just said, like I like WrestleMania 6 Andre and Hawaiian shirt Andre with the walkers was what I knew from my childhood, and like
Yeah.
going back and watching this shit, it's night and day is not a dramatic enough expression.
Absolutely. It's such an interesting watch. This was supposedly for the real world martial arts title. Bobby, have you ever fought for that one?
Yes.
Yeah. Who did you fight for it? My God.
I don't remember, man. It's a long time ago.
Phil Brooks,
Yeah.
My favorite is like Bobby's like matter of fact.
quick
Like
tap
there's
out,
no
Bob
like
got him.
Bobby's got like this matter of fact comment to our bullshit,
Yeah.
and it just fits so perfectly. You know?
The one earlier about us taking credit for the title change last night was the way he delivered that was incredible, wasn't it? It was like, yeah, that would be us. That was us. We did that. That was our thing. Yeah, this is absolute Bob. We all kind of talked about it a little bit there. We'll circle back, but we'll go you first. Like, what a scene this is, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I hadn't really seen Andre before we started doing these outside of WWF either, and it really has been a revelation because he really is very good, man. Like he is much different than you would expect. Just kind of having that frame of him, and yeah, it rules. And this match in general, like we've kind of seen like the Dave and Goliath sort of matches, but this one's kind of different because it's not Inoki's not just trying to chop him down; he's just trying to pick his spots and get an attack in here and there, and he's not, it's there's a lot of psychology here.
There's a real tactical element to this match. Early on, evading, early grappling exchanges. Andre kind of powers out of, and he has to wrestle him to the mat and go after the arm. Andre's selling is incredible. There's a real struggle to it. There's this idea that both guys have their own strengths and weaknesses. I mean, it is really packed with thought, which I didn't necessarily expect watching it. Alex, going back to you, because I know we kind of talked broadly about, but like, man, this was something, wasn't it?
I think the one part in the match that like sums up like what Andre was capable of at one point in time and just how dynamic of like a worker he was is it's towards the end and Andre gets him up and Canadian backbreaker. And it looks like he's setting him up for like a razor's edge. And then he gets him so back to the corner that Inoki's able to get his feet on the corner and kick off of it, land on his feet, and then give Andre a back body drop.
Yes.
It's fucking awesome. I do need to call out that when I say it used to be better, what I mean by that is if you look in the crowd for this match that was hyped as this big like sporting attraction and title match between these two guys, the men in the crowd are wearing suits and ties. Like they came to this like treating it like it was like a dignitary event. Like I couldn't get past that for a while. It's the Japanese thing; they're clapping and whatnot, but it's just like these people in ties, like they fucking were going to the opera or some shit. It's great. Yeah, I mean, it's a battle of leverage. I love in the beginning that Inoki does not want Andre to get his hands on him, so he's like just like ducking and running around the ring and trying not to grapple with them. And then, in the end, it still comes down to Andre still wasn't going to JOB, so we get the juice, and then it turns into a shoot afterwards, and then fucking Vince Sr. gets in the ring and, explains what's going on, and it cuts out pretty quick, but you can see the crowd's not happy. They're throwing their seat cushions in the ring and shit. But I spoke to it earlier, like, Inoki's selling, and I think it's become, because of Twitter and shit like that, people think when you say selling, it's like, I'm walking around and holding my arm to let you know that my arms hurt, that type of thing. Whereas, like Inoki's facial expressions and just his body language makes you believe he's like in a real struggle. This will come into play in like our next match too. Of like, he's not the NXT face and like Shawn Michaels style selling is not how you would really like react in an athletic competition. Dude, who was it? There was someone that posted Dana Brooke had a match on Main Event, and like 2 minutes into it, someone kicked out of a move, and she did like,
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
yeah,
it was someone from NXT too.
Jesus. But anyway, the point being, just like even to the end where Inoki's like barking orders and like he wants to fight, he wants back at
Yeah.
Andre. It's just all of it's great. But yeah, obviously, Inoki's the name on the marquee, but I don't think it can be overstated, especially in the current climate and generation we're in of wrestling fans. Of man, if you haven't seen this, seek it out, and if you haven't seen like what Andre could do, because even myself, that like for a long time, decade plus, I've always championed that Stan Hansen match, but this I was watching, it's like, Jesus, dude, this guy, you understand why he was an attraction just versus the WWE narrative. He was a big guy, pal, and he went out there and he called people boss.
They put some time into. They got like 23, 24 minutes, something like that. Like this, it's very, very impressive.
One thing I always liked about Inoki is like, if you ever watch him like in the pre-match and like in his entrance or whatever, like he always treats it like he's like going into actual battle.
Yes, he rules.
He's got like this look on his face, like he's like intense, like there's like this intense like I'm going
his
to war.
stance,
Like
he has like that trademark stance, kind of like where it's not quite like boxing position, but he's got like his front hands in a fist, and then his other one's like open so he can grapple, and it used to be better. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's true.
I will say the finish, I think they'd have been better off with just Andre headbutting the post and doing a count out. I mean, I know there's so many political things at play, but like that would have actually been a good finish because that was an incredible deal, right? Him headbutting the post. I mean, we see every other week a guy do the spot that's been that killed where you chop and the guy moves, you hit the post, sell your hand for a second, and go on that. He fucking headbutted it. I was like, I thought that'd be a good finish, but there was a really good back body drop force finish you mentioned earlier. So, Oracle, anything else on Inoki and Andre, brother?
Nah, man, fucking ruled.
Yeah, awesome, an awesome time. Again, we did it last time with the Andre match. You got to see this stuff, folks, if you haven't already. Okay, let's move forward here. Ricky Choshu. Now, Oracle, you were kind of talking about this year build, and you were talking about different pieces. Best you can you set the stage for this one? Because the heat for this one is just mind blowing. I mean, the crowd is electric for this.
Yeah, okay. Choshu is one of my blind spots, Oracle. So yeah, provide us some context. This would be helpful.
A few people are probably going to have to fill in the lines a little bit here in the chat. I know there's a few people who probably have better memories or a little bit more of an expertise. But so around 83, Choshu, I think the idea is like he and Fujinami are like, they get into a big feud. He and Fujinami do. And Choshu starts forming his own sort of group of people. His Aishin Gundan, someone who thank you for whoever told me that in the chat, formed his group called Aishin Gundan, and they're basically like renegades, like kind of like anti-establishment. I'm trying to find the best way to describe them. Who are kind of like
the firm.
Yeah. kind of like trying to go against the promotion or whatever. I can't remember all the details. And there's this year-long battle. They end up having like a famous gauntlet match in April of 84. That's an absolute classic and legitimately one of the best matches in the history of wrestling on tape. It's like 90 minutes long, but it is, if you watch all the build up to it, like it's amazing. And of course, Fujinami is, of course, Inoki's disciple, and it's kind of Choshu's kind of building up this big feud with Inoki, and kind of reaches that zenith, and they have this they have this big match, and I guess it was August of '94 or August of '84, excuse me.
Yeah.
But yeah, And not long after this, they legitimately leave. He and Aishin Gundan actually
Wow.
had actual dispute. This was like a kind of a shoot that kind of became a storyline, and then they
Mhm.
ended up leaving. Or maybe it was the other way around. It was a story, and then they left or whatever.
Yeah.
There you go. Joe from the chat's helping us out a little bit. But and it's like, so it's like this one had a little bit more of finality to it, maybe
Right.
because UWF feud kind of sort of dissolved itself because Maeda it became such a big issue. But Choshu and Aishin Gundan leave. They invade New Japan as Aishin Gundan, and are seen as New Japan invaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I think that's kind of what the impression was. And of course, they have a famous feud with Tenryu
Right.
and Jumbo.
Yeah.
And that goes on from throughout '85 and into early '86. Or I guess '85 and '86, and then they form they formed their own like little company or whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember what it's called. But eventually Choshu comes back. And the UWF guys are still there, and Choshu and Maeda have a huge falling out, and
Oh.
the UWF gets reformed after Maeda leaves. Because remember, there's videotape. I've seen it. It's on the New Japan set where Maeda kicks and then like kicks Choshu, and they get like in a shoot fight. And Maeda like kicks Choshu
Yeah.
in the eye, and like this eye like explodes and shit. Um, but but
Raps.
but yeah, this was a huge feud. There's an amazing heat. It's one of the great feuds in the history of wrestling. Aishin Gundan versus New Japan in 1983, 1984, and this is one of the big matches that kind of culminates. It's kind of the culmination, or at least one of the matches is kind of a culmination of the feud.
It certainly has that feel live. The crowd is just staggering for this.
Mhm.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
The second to last thing All Pro Joe puts on there, I think I remember reading about that. I think that's right, Joe.
Yeah, I believe that was brought up
I think
recently.
that's right.
Yeah.
Oh man, we didn't say it wasn't a carny.
Yeah.
Factual. There's some more awesome grappling here. They work them out, but there is enough heat that there is like inherent drama. You know, like, I don't think there was. This is a great match, but it wasn't the same level of detail to me as the Briscoe match had. But honestly, the thing was so over they didn't need it to be. They were just like the crowd was just rocking for everything they did. It was it was easy for them in a sort of which speaks to what Oracle just kind of laid out there. Like for example, when he has like the sharpshooter deal on the whatever submission he had, and Inoki like pushes up and the place like fucking stands up because he pushed up. It's incredible in that regard. Bobby, what did you make of it? Antonio Inoki, Ricky Choshu, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that really stood out was the crowd just being so into it, like they were the whole time. The match itself was good. I really liked some of the stuff they did. It was cool to kind of see how the production and all that had evolved in the decade or whatever since the last match we watched. But yeah, the crowd was really the thing that stood out. One of the loudest crowds that I can really remember, like start to finish in a match that we've watched for this, and it was very cool.
Because it's not like a pop, right? It's just like a sustained.
Mhm.
That's something that's kind of like I think people get confused now. It's like there's great pops, but you very rarely have matches where there's like actual heat throughout. Like they're living
Yeah.
and dying with it.
Let me say this. Bob points out the production. New Japan production is very cinematic,
Yeah.
and one of the first major promotions in the world that had the cinematic style of production, and it's outstanding. Like
Mhm.
they get the perfect shots, the
Beautiful.
perfect like
Mhm.
reaction. It's just like it's wonderful production, and they were far ahead of their time
Yeah.
in terms of producing pro
Still
wrestling.
are.
Like, yeah, oh yeah, they're still outstanding. But like they've been this good for literally 45
Right,
years.
and
Like,
there's never been caught up in that
yeah,
regard, right? Like
yeah.
it's amazing.
It's also like the like literal quality that they recorded it on
Mhm.
is a lot
Yeah.
higher than anything you'll find from that same time period. Like
Yep.
you can still
Mhm.
watch this in kind of close to high definition. It's
It
like
is.
what you said. It's from 1984.
Yep.
It's beautiful, man. It's like instantly iconic imagery, right? When you see
Mhm.
that visual, it's so striking.
We talked about that on the Stan Hansen one, the Gordy and Hansen, Kawada, and
Mhm.
the Tenru tag match we
Yes,
watched.
I believe so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that looks like a fucking movie.
Yeah, it's beautiful. one quick thing to shout out before we throw it to Alex, the lariat from Choshu that they kind of build to with all the mat work, and the people literally leap up, and there's like this sort of gasp, and it's, man, the investment is incredible. Alex, what do you make of Inoki and Choshu?
That was one of my notes here because like I brought this up I think on the last one we did, and so it was kind of fitting. Choshu does the Irish whip that I like, where he grabs both hands around the wrist and just throws Inoki, and the velocity hits the ropes with and bounces back. And when he catches him with that lariat, and the way like Inoki knows it's coming, so he like tries to turn to avoid the impact, but still gets laid out with it. Just wrestling can be good, y'all. Yeah, I was reading here too. Looks like our boys took home the Tokyo Sports Match of the Year award for this
Oh my
one.
God.
Just great stuff, man. And it's like what just Inoki's selling is just unreal. Like when Choshu's got him in the sharpshooter, and I'm sorry, I know you called it something different. I know it's also Scorpion Deathlock, but he's doing it in the way that fucking Mark. He's doing it he does it in the way that looks most devastating, where he's straight up and just putting like all his weight on it. And the way, you know, the best sharpshooter sell ever, Steve Austin with the blood, but like Inoki's still like, he looks like someone being tortured in the sense of his mentality is, this is happening to me and it really fucking sucks, but I have to figure out how to get out of it. So like he's clearly in pain, but it's not like a theatrical level of pain. And that's just something to behold. And like there's the moment in it where, you know, because Inoki gets his ass beat for most of this match. But when he starts doing the slaps and mounting the comeback, and you see like grown men opposite a hard cam, like, fuck him up, like that type of thing. It's tremendous. And then when he hits the German, like the place loses it, like
explodes.
And he does a properly applied cravat. So a young Chris Hero was somewhere very happy watching that. It's just like I can see, like, just from watching this, and like I said, Ricky Choshu is someone who's a pretty big blind spot for me, but it's probably not something to be proud of. But the amount of wrestling I've watched and stuff, like, you watch this, you see the heat, you see like the intensity of the match, that I realized halfway through it, I was like, man, no matter who wins this, I imagine if there was like an internet at the time, it would have been like a disaster. Like people would have been mad any way it went. And it sounds like that was part of it. Was Choshu was pissed. Inoki, it was. I was thinking about when Oracle was talking about earlier about the guy who wouldn't get out of the way and just kept winning. And I was like, who is that? And that's Misawa. Like a lot of people don't really choose to remember that he was not very popular prior to his death because he was just like, wouldn't get out of the way. And but of course the way things ended, he's massively romanticized. But this was just a situation of watching it. Like I felt like I understood everything was going on, having like no context going into it. And the Japanese crowds are rabid, like they can be, and you know that's someone special when they are, you know, like that Crush Gals style, the Terry Funk thing we talked about. You're hard pressed to find someone in the history of Japanese wrestling that could elicit emotion from the crowd like Inoki could, and this match is a good example of that.
Yeah, it's, you know, we often hear like Meltzer talks about a lot. You mentioned the quote earlier of like Hogan but more popular, and you know, that sounds incredible, but like you need to hear the way they react to him to like appreciate like Dave's not just talking there. Like that's the best way you can explain it. It's incredible.
The thing you have to kind of, so like, it's interesting. Choshu has a certain style that he works in his matches. And Choshu's matches, because like if you watch the Fujinami match, which are awesome, by the way, in '83, tremendous matches. Great match of Fujiwara in '87. Like if you watch those matches, and all of his you know, stuff from the '90s too, he's about milking spots and milking drama, and like he'll work all of his matches, like the Fujinami matches are about working in his sharpshooter, and just fighting over it, just like trying to get it in, or he's trying to hit his lariat the whole match, or he's trying to avoid somebody else's move, or he's like there's and one of the Fujinami matches, maybe more, they're fighting over, you know, who can put in a cross arm breaker. the whole match, and it rules.
Wow.
And like, but it just shows that Inoki also has some versatility because he can fit right in
Right.
Choshu's sort of formula of like, let's have our fucking like charismatic facial expressions, aura,
Mhm.
like, and milk these spots, milk this drama. Like, and granted, Inoki does that in all of his matches too, with the octopus and the German and all that stuff. You know, he milked his holds too. That's probably where Choshu got a lot of it, you know, that style from. But and of course they do that in spades here, and just the little things like when they finally, like when Choshu finally gets a sharpshooter on, right?
Mhm.
They're like, oh shit, you know, it's the heat's crazy. Or when Inoki fights out of the sharpshooter, or when he finally hits the German, right? Like, it's the way they milk these spots. Masterful stuff, man. Like it's it used to be better. Where we go? That's going to be the gag of the night, I guess.
I
There's
love
like
it.
subtlety. Sorry, actually, there's a subtlety to the way that Choshu works, like heel too, right? Like he's at the end, but he's not like mustache.
Well, and it's funny because they're not necessarily, because like Aishin Gunyan had a huge. I mean, they were very
Right,
popular
yeah.
in New Japan,
But they're
right?
like,
They had their fans,
and you could see that. You could see that,
yeah.
It's just interesting to me. Alex, go ahead.
I was just gonna say to what Oracle was speaking of, because the Enziguri was always Inoki's kill shot. Like he always had that in his back pocket. And there's a part in this where like he throws it, but it almost like skids over Choshu's head, and the crowd like goes nuts at first, and they realize it didn't really catch him, and it's wonderful stuff.
That rules. Fucking rules, man.
Okay, let's proceed here to our final match. January 4th, 1996. A lot of history here. Big Van Vader famously destroyed Inoki. What year was that? When did he
87.
December of 87.
Yeah, it's almost a decade.
Inoki wanted to bring him in and just have something crazy going on, and it caused a riot.
Yes,
and
they were banned from the building. Yeah.
It was Sumo Hall, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they
Sumo
were
Hall,
banned.
Yep.
This is such an incredible response to it.
I mean, to be fair, we needed to make sure it was a Japanese riot, so they were still kind of polite about it, but still, it was.
Yeah.
And then, of course, depending on what version of history you believe, that could have been Jim Hellwig that was in there squashing Antonio Inoki.
Yeah.
Which is an incredible fault. Vader is at this point, he's in WWF, right? Or is he headed? What's the?
He debuted at the Rumble, because that when I watched this match, I was like, "Fuck, that's awesome!" And then I was like,
this was
2 weeks later, he was bitched out by Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, there you go. Here we go. It's interesting. It's interesting, especially in a time where we're going to see a WWE talent work the Tokyo Dome again soon, right, boys? You know, shout to the Machine Gun. Hope he's enjoying this entertainment on his flight to Saudi Arabia.
Mind you, the significance of the December 87 Vader angle is not only significant just for like the history, but like that's the start of Big Van Vader. Like
that's his.
That's
like
him.
he isn't.
That's like before he was Baby Leon White, you know, with the little Taylor's hat on, where the hell he was, and
it made him.
AWA.
It made him, right. It's like the significance can't be overstated for Vader.
So great. Like he's still like figuring it out, and he's doing that thing. He keeps like doing I can't do it, but that really loud whistle. You're like, and he is like, "Look at your boy, I'm the man," like doing all this shit. Because it was like Inoki had not been like soundly beat in X amount of years, and then Vader squashed him in 3 minutes, and
awesome.
People didn't know how to react.
Which is still one of the best wrestling tropes. Like conquering babyface just gets mowed over by like that's great shit. Always works. It's great. The entrances for this aren't on New Japan World, but recently went like wrestling Twitter viral because Inoki has like an incredible entrance to this match.
Yes.
It also features the part where Vader like falls off the stage, which is unfortunate. Luckily he's Vader, so he just kind of punches guys until he gets the people back. But like that is a very funny thing that if you've never seen that, seek it out. Also, the entrance is like incredible. This match rules, but is remembered for one spot.
Yes.
Not because the match is bad, because the one spot is one of the most insane things like imaginable, which of course is the crazy German suplex, which recently Okada like went out of his way to take the German suplex this way against fucking Jonah. Because that was his tribute, which is the most professional wrestling thing ever.
That's the most Japanese wrestling thing ever.
Incredible deal. But Vader has a jump start and quickly gets to work on, honestly, and I know this is saying something with him, some of his meanest right hands ever get this match underway, don't they? You can tell he just fell down, bro. He is fucking nailing him. It's insane. Alex, what did you make of it? Inoki and Vader here in 96.
Inoki was just about to turn 53. So there you go. And that's Vader had to be under the contract of the World Wrestling Federation because they had already started hyping his debut for the Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
And do you guys remember at this point in time, like Vader would sometimes wear the gear like this, and other times he'd wear the Vader time up front? It's like, brother, can you not figure out which is like the front and back of your gear?
Yeah. That, and also the thing where he would just like, in some matches, after like 90 seconds, like, oh, fuck this mask, and just throw it off. He does that in this. Like, he's just like, oh, this is all shit, man. I ain't wearing this thing.
This is my kind of party. So, yeah, he like punches him in the face right away. And again, going back to, I didn't spend enough time in the last match about Inoki selling. Like, it's so different. The last match, like I was talking about when he's in the holds, and there's a point in the Choshu match where he gets like suplexed on his back, where he just like lets out like this cry of pain. And in this, it's like he's an old man getting tuned up. And at first he's like, all right, bring it on, big man. Let's see. And then eventually it just turns into him getting the shit beat out of him. And like, dude, his fucking corpse cell where he kicks out of the moonsault is just so good, where he's just like laying there. Like, I mean, he looks like in a movie, someone like dying and going out on their shield, that type of thing. But, we've talked about this before. Vader has just a completely special place in the zeitgeist of Japanese wrestling. So much so that we joked about, even into like 98 and the end of his run with the Fed, he's like, well, I can't lose to this guy. It'll hurt my money in Japan. And like, but when he goes over there, it just, the people clearly view him in like this different stratosphere. And so everything he did to Inoki, people were like, oh, fuck. And then, yes, the absurd German suplex that a 22-year-old should not take, let alone a 52-year-old. And, it's good shit on the Japanese wrestling when the commentators just scream like a little kid.
Yeah.
Ah! It's fantastic. But this was supposed to be like one of Inoki's last matches, and it epitomizes what his stance on wrestling was. The realism factor mixed with the fighting spirit thing, where he keeps getting up and figuring out a way to win. I did laugh for all the like technical proficiency and greatness of Inoki. Motherfucker knows how to swing a chair. He just like belts Vader with it at one point. And then, the juice is like the bleeding and shit was not at this point in time in Japan wasn't as like fashionable. So the fact that they both get busted open is a pretty big deal. And yeah, it's 13 minutes or something like that. But it's a good time. It's an abrupt finish, but as you and I have talked about in here before, Joe, if you're going to use an armbar in wrestling, don't lay in it for 2 minutes. Right. That kills the idea of it all. And so a great time. And Big Leon congratulates him afterwards. And it's just
it's kind of magical, right? It's weirdly, it's really stirring, man. I know.
It is. It's one of those Japanese matches that does feel like there's a certain like sheen or like filter on it that it's just kind of like,
absolutely. It's the other thing too is Inoki always had this like poise, like you were talking about earlier with like where he is pre-match, like he's like in stance. What makes this match so compelling and like enduring, I think, as a memory is he still has it, but there's like a desperation to him here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as an older man here, he actually does feel like he's fighting for his life, which is incredible when you realize, like, really, with a context match, this is really ultimately an exhibition. Really. Yeah. I mean, they don't work it that way. Obviously, usually they get double juice, but, Vader's, he's going off to WWF, and Inoki's literally retiring. So, but it's wrestled with such urgency. And when Inoki's selling, it feels like he's, like, in real danger. He's not going to get out of there. It's just, that's what really stood out to me. Like, there's a lot of, let's be real here. We watch matches across a 25-year span, and Inoki feels pretty much like the same wrestler in all of those matches, which is a positive and a negative depending on which conversation you're having, right? I mean, it speaks to kind of his consistency, but also that's part of why I think there's pushback on him as a great worker necessarily. I think we all love this, but it was the one thing that stood about this was there was something different to his confidence wasn't as outward, and it was more like he just was trying to survive in there, which was, I thought, actually made it even more dramatic and kind of allowed the match to really soak up the drama. Because, physically, it's a very simple match. I mean, Vader just beats the shit out of him for the most part. He makes Cole come back, Cole hope spots, and they go home. Like, it isn't a complex match, but this is a good example of what you can do if the audience is invested in one of the guys. That can pack a hell of a punch, the basics. It's really, really interesting.
He versus the other matches we've watched in the majority of his career, he allows himself to appear vulnerable here, which is not. I mean, Inoki would show up at those Pride events and years later and still try to look like the baddest motherfucker in the room. So this is like a rare occurrence, but he does. It's like you watch it and you're like, he's not sure he can win this, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. And Vader is, Vader's at an interesting point here too, because we know what's about to happen. But it's worth noting, 1994 was not the hottest year when it comes to Big Van Vader, and there was a lot of talk that because physically, I think his motivation had dwindled some. It's like he feels like he's fucking back at his absolute prime here, which honestly, that's something. Just him in Japan is a special thing because even the matches post OBF, I recently watched some of those on the air with some of the folks, and he brings it back even some. Then I mean, he hasn't got the energy he used to have, but he still has that aura. It's a wonderful combination of things. Bobby, I think you tweeted about enjoying this one, mate. Inoki and Vader, this is your kind of pro wrestling, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Just, from the start where they're just kind of beating the shit out of each other. And then, the German suplex was incredible. Just good stuff, man. This is the sort of thing that I really do enjoy. And this was probably my favorite of the 4 matches. They were all very good, but yeah, this one was the one that just kind of appealed to me the most. And yeah, just a great time.
And it's worth noting, we've said it for every match, but the popularity of Inoki is still very much present here in 1996. Obviously, it's a special occasion with him winding down, but the audience is still there, right, in a big, big way for it. So it's very, very special. Oracle, what did you make of this one, mate?
Yeah, this ruled. The blood popped me, man. The way Vader bled between his goofy haircut. It cut, came down his face. Fucking ruled. Yeah, this kicked ass. German suplex, of course, is a legendary spot. Totally insane. Just an awesome brawl. Really, really, really enjoyed this. I want to point out, because we didn't really get to talk about it much, but every time Inoki's in a big match, his entrance is amazing.
Yeah,
one of the great entrance themes of all all time. And every time, when he comes out and the people are like Inoki, Bombaye, Inoki, it's so fucking awesome. All those big 80s matches that he has, and this match in particular, right? That I think you posted a clip of, maybe a few weeks back.
Right.
Just an incredible entrance, and just kind of exemplifies how much of a star he was.
An icon, right?
Yeah,
an icon,
absolutely.
man.
Oracle, have you ever seen it got posted? I think my buddy Eduardo, far from Texas, posted it when Inoki passed at one of the Pride events. I believe it was in Kawasaki Stadium because it was an open air. Inoki parachuted into it.
Yeah, I watched it. I saw Eduardo's post. Yeah. Fucking ruled.
One of one. We say it a lot, man. One of one. That was a great way to close out our lineup here. I have to ask, Oracle, feel free to steer the ship on this one. Other matches you'd recommend for Inoki Now, we talked about the some of those.
Let me. Y'all talk amongst yourselves.
Okay.
I've got to jog my memory a little bit. There's some
Alex, where you go? Go ahead.
The IWGP final with him and Hogan.
Yeah, that's good. 83, right?
Good.
Yeah, and Japanese Terry, man. Hoof, brother. And what else? I mean, we talked about the Flair match and the Collision in Korea. That if you're not familiar with that show, I think it's worth learning about first, just the kind of machinations behind it. But that match is good.
One thing on that quickly: if you're going to watch that match, folks, don't watch, as much as it may be tempting, don't watch the WCW cut with Bischoff and Sonny Ono, because the way they produce that show in terms of the sound is like horrific. Like you don't get the reason that match is so famous is because the audience goes nuts for that match, like out of nowhere, right? On New Japan World, it's there. You'll get a better read for it. But carry on, because that's saying I made that mistake before. But carry on.
Oh no, he wrestled everyone, man. Like you can find matches with Antonio Inoki versus anyone. The brawls he had with Brody were pretty fun. I mean, no one wins because neither of those guys were going to job, but it's like there was just so much he did. That he had another couple matches with Andre that were pretty enjoyable back in the 70s. I remember during when he was wrapping up, Andre came back over to put Inoki over. I think he let him slam him or something. The 10-room match is mentioned here is really solid. Yes. It's fun to watch Inoki's matches in the WWF from the 70s when he came over. I think early 80s too, just to see kind of how the crowd reacts to him. The 70s and 80s matches he had in Japan, like the big ones, any of them that you want to take your pick from, I think will prove the point that we tried to make here of like he was a star on a completely different level than everyone else he was playing with.
This one from 94 was one of the matches that was in our original lineup.
Oh, right on.
So Inoki and Tenryu from 94. So Oracle, you ready to go, mate? You got your
Yeah. So there's some ones I'm noticing. All the Hansen matches, some of them are better than others, but the Hansen matches from 80 and 81 are all pretty good, including one or two that are really good. There's a tag tournament in late 85.
Oh yeah.
With CG Sakaguchi, who was a huge New Japan upper management guy there for years, decades. One of Inoki's right hand man. Sakaguchi was there forever. And they have a really good match with the Fujinami and Kingo Kimura. Kingo Kimura was an 80s New Japan star, 90s New Japan star who was kind of an underrated guy that people don't talk about enough. He was a great worker. Let's see. I want to find the listing of the people in these gauntlet matches to give people some. Okay, so here's one from '86 in the UWF feud: Inoki, Fujinami, Kimura, Monoseki, Ueda, and Hoshino versus Maeda, Fujiwara, Kido, Takada, and Yamazaki. That's an incredible match. Apologies for my terrible Japanese pronunciation there. Let's see.
What was the tag match that we penciled in? Was it?
I believe it was. I think it was the second Fujinami and Kimura versus Inoki and Sakaguchi, because that's the one where I think Fujinami pins Inoki.
Got you. Okay.
I believe that's the one where he actually finally beats Inoki in a match. Let's see. I kind of want to see who's in the fight. The problem is on this listing they don't have.
The Regal match is fun too. It's worth noting, right? That's a fun deal, just for the occasion of it. It's very interesting.
Keep talking. I want to find the list for the people who's actually in these 84 gauntlet, and 86 gauntlet that I think people have the time to watch.
Bad News Bears 3, or I'm sorry, it's just the Bad News Bears Go to Japan, starring former Academy Award nominee Jackie Earl Haley. I think he was just nominated, but also you have a whole scene with Antonio Inoki in there. Ooh, good call. Billy Robinson match. I mean, anything Billy Robinson is good shit. I think this little going through his Wikipedia, like I said, how interesting he is. This is like a perfect like Inoki paragraph here. Inoki converted to Shia Islam in 1990 during a pilgrimage to Karbala, the Shiite holy city in Iraq. He was in Iraq negotiating for the release of several Japanese hostages. While in Iraq, Inoki was bestowed the Islamic moniker Muhammad Hussein Inoki, but later reportedly described himself as both a Muslim convert and a Buddhist. In 2014, Inoki said he was usually a Buddhist.
Usually.
That's fascinating, cat. Man, when they did the Dark Side of the Ring on Collision in Korea, I couldn't believe they got him for it. They got the old man to sit down and do an interview.
And it must be said, that is an incredible piece of business. I mean, I know a lot of people avoid that show because it can be, a tough watch. It may not make sense if you haven't seen it, but folks, that episode is like a hoot. It is like, because Scott Norton is like oblivious to what's going on. Even now, 27 years, he's like perplexed that this was a challenging thing. Eric Bischoff goes for a jog in the morning.
And then you smash cut to fucking Too Cold Scorpio, who's fashioning a shiv out of fucking chopsticks that he was given.
He's unusually entertaining considering what the program usually covers. But yeah, it's
It's that
an
one, and
incredible piece of business.
I forget the other one I really enjoy, because like all the other ones, it's just like if someone dies, someone died, and it's like, so that one's at least like everyone made it home, and it's just this really stupid story.
Yeah, and you have the Hogan story too of him being like,
Okay, here
"Fuck
we
me,
here,
bro,"
here we go.
you
Here
know?
we go.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I was like, I don't think so, dude.
Here we go. Yeah, I found the the
Okay.
84 gauntlet. Okay.
Go ahead, Oracle.
So that's Inoki, Kimura, Takada, Fujinami, and Fujiwara in Team New Japan versus Aishin Gundam, which is Anna Hamaguchi, Teranishi, Kobayashi, Choshu, and Yatsu. That match is maybe the greatest match of all time, in my opinion. If we're gonna do like the top matches ever deals, that match is must see. Again, you might want to watch. There might be a weeks long thing if you wanted to watch the build and such, but it's worth it.
There you go.
And then I want to see the 5-on-5 gauntlet from '86, and then I'll shut the hell up.
You good?
Is he even
He wrestled Carl
He might
Gotch
not
towards
be in
the
that.
beginning of New Japan too, which I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's obviously my kind of shit. But if you're into
Yeah.
the grapple heavy stuff, then it's quite good. He also booked. I've never seen it. I saw a picture from it, but he booked in the Genome Federation a Necro Butcher versus Bob Sapp match. That is kind of like one of my matches that I've tried to track down before.
That was an interesting little territory you had there, wasn't it? That Gino deal. It was a weird deal. There's a lot going on there.
Never mind.
Like-
He's not actually in the 5-on-5 gauntlet. I think he does commentary during the match.
That rules.
But anyways, it just for posterity's sake, it's Team UWF, which is Maeda, Yamazaki, Takada, Kido, and Fujiwara versus Team New Japan, which is Yamada, also known as Jushin Thunder Liger, Kimura, Sakaguchi, Koshinaka, and Fujinami.
NXT 2015 star Jushin Thunder Liger.
Yeah, that's right.
Liger is someone who also regrettably subscribed to the Inokiism train of thought and tried to fight an MMA fight.
Yeah,
whilst wearing his gimmick mask.
of course. I have to respect the business, bro. I have to. Well, there you go, folks.
Yeah.
There's a couple months worth of homework. If you're interested in watching more, this is going to be difficult because we really talked in great detail. But we usually do this to wrap up here. Your view, Bob. We'll start with you. If I just said to you, what's the legacy of Antonio Inoki? What's your instinctual response on a personal level? Bobby, go ahead, mate.
It's honestly so hard to just kind of boil it down because, like we talked about, like he did so much, and there's just one of the probably 2 or 3 most influential figures in the history of wrestling. Like, probably like him and Vince is up there, and that might be 1 and 2, to be honest with you. Like
Greg Gagne.
Yeah, well, no, but but yeah, it was fascinating to look through. And his legacy is kind of pioneer and did stuff that still resonates today, and just influenced the business for 50 years or whatever, 50 years plus, and it's pretty cool.
It certainly is. Alex, what do you think? Legacy of Antonio Inoki.
One of one, a life unlike any other, and like as much as he just completely changed both professional wrestling and in some ways is like, you could say almost like up there with Kimura and the old Gracie fucker, like as far as like people who kind of crafted the MMA world. And certainly for my interest, someone who's very influential. And outside of that, he's someone that, like, even if you're not into wrestling MMA, it's worth reading an article on him. Like I reposted, on some different and sent to different people the ESPN obit on him. Just like talked about just what because it's so fantastical. It is, his life does seem like strange because of all the things he did and all the things he went through. But at the end of the day, was a great wrestler, a great worker, someone who understood like the, just minute things about the professional wrestling industry that made people special, things that I don't understand until I watch someone like that and be like, I would have never thought that's something that makes a match, but that guy has it and pulls it out.
Absolutely.
And yeah, just a carny amongst carnies. And, I think it would be damn near impossible to do like a Mount Rushmore of all wrestling, because you have El Santo, Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin, John Cena, Vince McMahon, that type of Alexa Bliss, that type of thing. But I think like any fair Mount Rushmore that you did of pro wrestling, if you're not going to do Antonio Inoki's got to be someone you consider just for all the things he accomplished. And like, I understand Ricky Dozan was probably a bigger star in the nation of Japan than he was, but like the heights he took it to, and also the depths he wrote it down to, because he was so stubborn. It's just a fascinating guy, but like a true mega star. One of the biggest stars the profession of pro wrestling ever has and ever will produce.
Absolutely. Oracle,
Yes.
what do you reckon, mate? The legacy of Antonio Inoki. My God, is he prepared some sort of monologue here? Is this is
Oh
he pulling up a statement?
Sorry. I'm getting.
You're fine.
Sorry.
Good brothers are texting him, telling him about the flight.
Yeah.
It must not help what he thinks of their matches.
Well, but we decided to call a truce when they started bumping for Rhea. So, but it's good to know that Alex has noticed that Rhea's good. But anyways, Antonio Inoki, absolutely one of the most influential people in the history of wrestling, no doubt. Just so many incredible stories. I don't know all of them. We'll never know all of them. Just the first, I don't know. In a lot of ways, he was the first kind of carny that like everybody knew in wrestling.
Right. Yeah.
Like without Antonio Inoki, there's no Hulk Hogan. There's no Vince McMahon. There's no.
Well,
I know that. I sound like a soundbite from a fucking Peacock
Well,
documentary.
Wasn't
but
that the thing of like Vince wanted to work more with Baba because Inoki would try to like carny fuck him style?
yeah, because Bubba was famous for the opposite. Right now, there's always been like people have always said that Mrs. Bubba had to play like bad cop sometimes so that he could maintain it. But the perception always was like one of them is this like gentleman who does business the perfect way, and the other one's Inoki.
Yeah.
I do love your idea, though, Oracle, of like Hogan watching Inoki backstage. Hold on, you can say no to losing, dude.
Game changer, bro. We never recovered. Oracle giving the hard sell there. Without Inoki, there's no Vince or Hogan.
Damn! Why didn't he? Why wasn't he the one stabbed with piss on the knife? but he's awesome. Like incredible aura. Even when his matches are kind of like okay, like it's still fun to watch his entrance, right? It's still fun to kind of watch him just kind of do his thing. When he was at his best, he was fucking amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Just one of the all-time greats for sure.
He like, yes, deserves criticism for the carnyisms and some of the things that like you can say bad about him, but I would much rather we have a lot of younger wrestlers trying to be Antonio Inoki than trying to be like Shawn Michaels. Like I think there's a reason he was so special, and it's because he kept his cards so close to the vest. And like there's no one on the special level or whatever scale you want to use that can be measured like close to Antonio Inoki right now. Right. And it'd be cool to have that, and it would be cool for more people to want to be that level of star and that level of celebrity. But to be fair, the fans don't want that. All modern wrestling fans want are match graphics and GIFs. That's what they want.
Well, There was a pretty strong house last night. Alex, I don't know if you saw Raw.
What, in Dallas? They always do well there.
They were packed in, bro. Did you see that, Bobby? You heard what happened on Raw?
I did.
We haven't mentioned it much tonight. There's new World's Tag Team Champions over there.
Right there.
He might be coming back.
It's called Victory Square, right outside the AAC there in Dallas. It's where like you can go to watch Mavs games or the Stars play and whatnot. They were celebrating and actually charging tickets to watch Alexa Bliss and Asuka win the tag titles out there.
That makes sense. Finally, some real champions, right?
It'll be like, years from now in the textbooks, that picture of like the Times Square in Japan of everyone watching the Destroyer versus Ricky Dozan. It'll be that, but Alexa Bliss and Asuka.
And on a Dallas sports book, like if you go to like the Dallas Welcome Center, they would have like Dirk shooting, making like his famous layup in Game 2 of against the Heat down on like the bottom right hand corner, but right in front center is Alexa and
Twisted Bliss.
They're above that shot of Kerry, David, and Kevin hitting the triple drop kick on the Freebirds.
I think the best way to explain Antonio Inoki is that for better, worse, and everything in between, he just simply is professional wrestling.
Yes.
Right? Warts and all. What that means to you, it probably pretty neatly correlates with what Antonio Inoki was. Yeah. I don't know. It's as Bob said, it's very hard to just kind of isolate to one thought or feeling, but that is the best way to kind of sum it up. All right. Let's look ahead here. Now, I have maintained some of our candidates from last month, as suggested by Power the Contrarian. So we have from last month, I believe we had Eddie Guerrero, that is, not the Mad King who loses on television a lot. Eddie Guerrero, Yokozuna, and Scott Hall, I believe, are the ones that popped us most just on the sort of lineup.
Scott Levy got cut? Thought we were going to do a Raven episode.
Well, I made some decisions there. We have 3 new candidates. One of these is me popping myself, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. The other 2 are very interesting. We'll start with one of the Oracle of Wrestling's all-time favorites, the timeless Christian Cage, who I think could be very interesting the match lineup could be interesting for Christian. We have one of the most charismatic wrestlers ever, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. And we have the new mouthpiece of Baron Corbin, John Bradshaw Layfield. Is how we're going to close out. We have 6 names. We have Yoko, we have Eddie, we have Razor, we have Christian, JBL, and Randy Savage. Bobby, where are you immediately? Where are you leading immediately there?
Probably Eddie Guerrero or Scott Hall. I think we'll get the 6 best matches with those.
Well,
Bob, do you know who Randy Savage is?
I do.
Okay.
I don't know if Scott's match catalog is better than Christian.
Savage,
especially Savage. But yeah.
That's fair.
I get you. Though. Eddie's probably the best match catalog, I would guess, right?
Yeah.
My only concern with Eddie is it will fucking rule, but like Eddie may have been covered to a point where there's like nothing left to say. And I know that's rich coming from us, who, according to Bob, had the most predictable winner every month. Like Eddie is like, bro, there's a clip of Eddie every week on our timeline. You know? Like, and that's not a problem. I'm happy to do it. He's the best. He was awesome. But like, I don't know, Oracle, which were you thinking on this?
I'm thinking Eddie Savage or Christian Cage.
Okay, Alex, are you fine with that leading 3, and then we'll talk through those, or then any of the others need mentioning?
Yoko is like an initial eyebrow raiser, but then it's like, it's 6 matches. What are we going to do there?
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, I think the 3 Oracle just named are fine leading candidates.
I think there is an argument that Christian Cage is the most interesting for the way that we do these shows. 3 acts would be really interesting, though, because like, would TNA be its own act?
Probably.
And then
I would have to say so, because that's like, one of y'all said it on one of the conversations we had. He was like the first guy to make that place seem legitimate in the sense of like going from, man, that'd be hard too, because he had
That fucking
bangers.
Rhino match on that Special Impact, I fucking love that.
The cage
man.
match where he goes
Yeah.
like to an immediate like 11 on the Muda scale, and then you got the Destination X match with Joe and
That's
the
great.
Fucking ladder match with Kaz, man.
That's right. When everyone thought Kaz was going to be a breakout star, and
Yeah.
but he had to go buy some camo and hunt some elite. And then what was the other one? The lockdown match with Abyss. The cage match is good.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then like he had and I love Christian, so that's
We could do like Act 1 would be, his first WWE run, right? And
We'd
we'd
have
do
to
a
do him
singles and a tag. We have to do a tag with Edge of some kind, right? We have to.
we'd have to
I
do
think.
the match with Taka where he won the light heavyweight title, and then they just dissolved that belt.
We could do a tag and a singles. Then we did TNA Act 2, and then Act 3 would be his return to WWE, and we could finally get Oracle in his 2009 ECW bag. Finally.
Yeah.
We've been building to that angle for a year now, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he fits our style most. I guess is what that's just my personal pick. Bob, what do you think? You're very dismissive of the instant classic Christian Cage initially. What are you? Are you coming around to the idea, or are you bullish on this? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I wasn't so much dismissive as I forgot he was a candidate because I'm very tired, but Christian would be fine.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah,
He'll
I
be fine.
turned that around and buried the shit out of you. He's like,
I know,
I'm sorry,
it
leave me
just-
alone.
Buried the show too. He'll be fine. Oh, fuck it. Who cares? Oracle, I know you're always down for some Christian Cage. Are you in on this? What do you think?
Yeah,
we
let's do it.
hijacking this deal? Alex, you
Yeah.
in?
Yes, I don't have to watch any AEW, do I?
No.
Okay, yeah.
No.
You're
I kid,
very
I
lucky
kid, I
that
kid.
You're
His
lucky
two
the
matches-
TNA run is that great,
Yeah,
You're
his two matches he had with Kenny I watched were both very good. I
they
jest.
were.
Yeah. He had some really good. The match with Cole was like one of Cole's best matches of this year. I mean, they had a TV match. It was like really, really strong.
Oh,
He
yeah.
didn't wrestle that much this year.
Yeah.
When he first came in, he was great.
He's hurt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did he do? Something his arm? What's supposed to do with him?
I don't
Bob?
remember.
Dr. O'Neill? What was
Yeah, I
it?
thought it was his arm or something, collarbone.
He has a sling, so we're not really we're going on a limb with that guess. I think now that I think about it, but
He must
Christian
have
Cage
blown his back
Yeah.
out carrying Edge for 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he's doing okay now. He's going 4-1/4 with Finn Balor, right? Oracle, you was a big fan of that.
Well, I mean, Rhea Ripley and Dominic Mysterio carried that. That tells you things.
Yeah. Fair, that's fair. All right, there you go, folks. The instant classic Christian Cage. Our kind of wrestler in the sense that many people just don't care about him at all, which is the way it works around here. We respect we're in. I can't wait for Oracle Light to do 45 minutes on an ECW TV match with Jack Swagger.
Oh, that match fucking rules.
I know
There
we're
we
gonna do.
And I will go to bat for that match.
We're
I
gonna
mean, if
probably
we put
do.
something else, I'm fine with it, but I will go to bat for it.
We have to do a Randy match. We just have to. Those matches are beautiful.
The over the limit one's the best, but
Yes, we'll do and then the other match has got to be an ECW match. So we'll try and figure it out. But that's up next. Bobby, any final thoughts, plugs, promotions, so on and so forth? What you got?
No, not too much. We'll be back Thursday evening for the late night grin. Friday we might do a Crown Jewel preview. Otherwise, we'll just recap it probably Tuesday. Oracle if you're around Tuesday, or we'll just do it Friday. Either one.
I'll probably definitely be there on Friday.
Yeah.
Tuesday. I'm not sure yet.
That's fine. We'll preview it. It's got 8 matches. Some of them look okay.
8?
What's the 8th?
They added the women's tag title match.
What are the other 7? 8's a lot
Whatever.
of matches for them now, man. That's
It
a lot.
is. It's Roman and Logan Paul,
Mhm.
Drew and Cross in a cage,
That
and Bailey
is-
and Bianca. They're
Yep,
doing
Bianca, last woman standing. Yeah.
um,
Brock and Bobby.
Brock and Lashley, yeah, Braun and Omos, Usos and the Brawling Brutes, and the 6-man.
That's right. OC versus Judgment Day, and they're gonna bring people are posting Dana Brooke gifs as the person to offset Rhea Ripley.
That'd be something. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll be a new character for Nikki after she just got her last new character and lost. We'll let it play out, folks. I don't know.
Ron Omos, man. To quote Jim Ross, well, this is going to be a chore.
There you go, folks. That's what you got to look forward to. Oracle, anything else, mate? Any final thoughts?
I mean, not really. I'll be here. I'll be here on Thursday.
Good.
I'll be here. Saying my normal stupid shit. Hopefully, Bobby and I can do a preview on Friday. We'll see.
Fair. There you go. Crown Jewel preview to look forward to, folks. The power is back. Alex, I appreciate very much. You guys at the Contrarian added us to your perennial plugs, so to speak. So, lads, we don't have to be nice to Alex in the DMs anymore. We're getting put over on there now. So but as always, put over the Great Contrarians podcast. I'll go ahead.
Yeah, we are thecontrarians.com. The Contrarians. You can find us on any of your podcatchers at Contrarian Prime on Twitter. Of course, I am at Contrarian Alex. We have a YouTube page as well as a Facebook and an Instagram at Contrarian Prime on those as well. Movie podcast coming up soon. We have the 2011 great sports drama Warrior, starring Tom Hardy, Nick Nolte, and Joel Edgerton. And I got a couple irons in the fire right now. Putting on our Patron, our big debate on Halloween Ends. I was for it. My co-host was against it. So
Julio and I shared ratings on that one.
But yeah, check it out. As always, gentlemen, a pleasure to be here. It's always a good time, and I look forward to our Christian discussion in the near future.
Absolutely.
I think this was an appropriate episode in the sense of we kind of, more than any other, there were a lot of lily pads we jumped to, and I think it was fitting because that's kind of the story of Antonio Inoki's life.
Yeah, I kind of looked at it and I was like, we should just talk about it. I mean, there's no good us hopping around matches, and the matches are going to overlap a lot because of the kind of worker he was. So I like the way it worked out. Also, for anyone who's not familiar with Warrior, which Alex just mentioned, that is in fact the film where Kurt Angle portrays Fedor Emelianenko. So if you're into that kind of thing, which you should be, check it out. Check out the review, so on and so forth. All right, folks, I'm headed off. My flight has been delayed, which is a layered bit that we'll get into on social media in the coming days and weeks. I'm headed.
Flight being delayed the week of WWE going to Saudi Arabia for Crown Jewel.
Indeed. My US excursion has arrived. I will be selling 8x10s. I will be taking photos for the, understandable price of $50 each. If you see me, keep a distance. Yell, I like the late night grin, and I will throw one of those 8x10s your way. I will send someone to collect the money. Okay? That's a fair rule. I've made that clear now, folks. You heard that, right, guys? Do not approach me. Okay? I will lash out. Do not approach me. No. But I'll probably see, I know I'm seeing Young Dukes, hopefully, at the Rampage program. But when I'm away, folks, I don't know what I'm going to do. I may record some podcasts for Patreon just because there's a very good chance I'll be bored once I refuse to do multiple sightseeing trips. So look for that. Maybe don't. I don't know. Enjoy Crown Jewel. Enjoy AEW Dynamite featuring Samoa Joe versus Brian Cage. Good luck to our friend Joe putting the match together. Prayers up. And keep grinning, folks. I'll be back soon. You're in safe hands. Bobby has got the StreamYard login. So don't worry. We won't miss a beat. We'll speak soon. Keep grinning. All hail. And enjoy this outro.